In Jesus' day, Caesarea Philippi was a town that was rebuilt by Philip the Tetrarch in honor of Caesar, thus the name. It is located about 20 miles northeast of Lake Galilee. Caesarea Philippi was not to be confused with Caesarea Maritime, which is actually on the shores of the Mediterranean Sea, thus a port city. The town was built upon the ruins of a previous one, Panion, the place where the Canaanites worshipped the Greek god Pan and the nymphs. And Panion is where King Joram led his kingdom into idolatry, worshipping the pagan gods of his wife. True to form, Caesarea Philippi contained many monuments to Caesar. And it is there and within the context of a history of multiple false gods that Jesus asks his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And we get various answers. And most importantly, who do you say I am? And we're very aware of Peter's response, "You are the Christ." The word Christ and the words or the title Messiah are used interchangeably. And for Jewish people, either word contained with it a multiplicity of meanings. The memories of Kings David and Solomon that held the promise of splendor, military victory, the hope of a national revival, the restoration of Israel's former glory. I called to mind last week how the region had been laid low by the Assyrians and the Babylonians, and that territory now under Roman control. David and Solomon were by far the ancient Israel's best leaders, and the title Messiah held within it all the hopes and dreams of a Jewish people. And Peter placed all these dreams and hopes on Jesus when he declares him as Christ, or Messiah. Within the mind of the people, there's a disconnect between the idea of Christ and Messiah on the one hand, and Jesus is teaching the disciples that the Messiah would have to suffer, be rejected, killed, and would rise from the dead. And for the disciples, it just didn't make sense. They did not understand. And the joining of Messiah with suffering just did not compute. So incomprehensible this joining of concepts of Christ, Messiah, suffering, and death, the gospel tells us that Jesus took two other occasions to restate his point with the disciples. Peter questions. He takes Jesus aside to set him straight, as we hear in today's gospel, and Jesus in short order puts him in his place. Jesus tells Peter this is how it's going to be, and this is how it is. Jesus embraces the cross, and the road to rising will be through dying, and that there are no other options if redemption is to occur. Jesus continues his instruction and says that those who wish to follow him into eternal life must likewise take up their cross and follow. And the implications: everyone has a cross. Christians, those who are not. Athletes, professionals, wealthy, the impoverished, celebrities, people of all ages, in every age, the faith-filled, the faithless. Everyone has a cross, because the cross, therefore, is not solely a Christian invention. When it comes to physical suffering, and there's plenty of that, we should try to alleviate it as best as we can, and we sometimes are able to be more successful than others. That said, there is a suffering about which we can do nothing, and accordingly, them are the crosses that a person must carry. Now, maybe somewhere in this universe, there's a planet where accidents do not happen, where people do not have cancer, where violence does not plague cities and countries, where human life is respected, where people are honest and transparent, where Parkinson's and Alzheimer's diseases are unknown. And maybe such a place exists in this universe, but it's not in the one where we live. Nor is it there one into one which we've been baptized. In this world, we are called to follow Christ with the cross that we have, whatever size, shape, or color it might be. As implied, we follow Christ by taking our crosses as opposed to pretending that they're not there, or finding ways to avoid them or to curse them. And we are called to embrace our cross and to lift them up and to carry them, not to drag them along, leaving marks on the ground behind us as we do so, nor is it to be any complaining. Later in the gospel, Jesus gives us an example of how to embrace our crosses and to carry them. Jesus does not lift up his cross or hold it up as if it were a trophy, as some of us are tempted to do. Jesus simply embraces the cross and carries it. The crosses we have in this life are unique ways that each and to all of us who follow Christ. And for us, they become for us our personal connection to Jesus. And called to follow Jesus, the cross we bear marks the specific path by which we are to follow him. Many are similar in terms of common diseases and like, but each one is unique unto itself, and we are called to follow that particular path along the way. Documented, there are paths by which the saints carry their crosses. We're familiar with some of those. Biographies have been written that note how other people have carried theirs, and they fill library shelves. And in our own memory, our own personal memory, there are the unwritten stories of those who are ever so close to us, living witnesses of faith who have carried theirs. Everyone on earth has a cross. And about that, we have no choice. The cross will do one or two things. It will embitter us and perhaps crush us, or it will strengthen us and lead us to eternal joy. And how we respond to the specific cross that we have is our choice. If you follow the Lord with it, the cross will become for you the path that leads to holiness in this world and in the world to come in the presence of Christ. On that afternoon in Caesarea Philippi, Jesus taught an important truth about the Messiah and of our discipleship. We come to the Father's glory not by going out of this world, but by going through it. And not by avoiding our crosses, but by embracing them and carrying them. And the setting in which we live today is no different than that of Jesus in Caesarea Philippi. We are surrounded by multiple monuments, God-like figures, each standing before us, calling out to us, and perhaps in the process capturing our attention, our admiration, and ultimately our worship. The question posed to the disciples by Jesus is the same one that has been asked of us today. Who do you say I am? Consider first how you address Jesus in your prayer, his name, his title. At least gets you started on trying to specifically identify and what all it means, who Jesus is. Consider then if that squares against the multiple monuments surrounding you in daily life, perhaps the ones that we've gotten our attention. Which then do we give highest honor, glory, and worship? Of all the monuments that surround us, only one, no matter how or who you say it is, brings light, life, and salvation. And in the name, or if the name or the title of the person whom you worship, or reference I should say, does not have a cross attached to it, then you are worshiping the wrong God.